Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Donna Just Being Real. My channel is all about dating, love, relationships, and toxic relationship advice channel. Yes, we're getting back into this lady again. This woman is deranged. She's completely out of her mind. Yes, she is. All right, so today is the competency hearing that they had last week. But I guess she lost it, but whatever. The reason why I want to watch this is because I like to see the psych evaluations. You know how I am over here. The psych evaluations, the interaction of the couples and all this. And this is a relationship that went wrong. Okay? And she's a meth head. I think he was doing meth too. So basically, mething it up and having, sex. And she decided she wanted to cut his head off and a couple other his body parts. And I did do coverage on this. I did 2 other videos on this. And the trial is starting Monday. So I will be following this trial. Now Monday morning I'll be working from home. So I'm going to be streaming it in the daytime in the morning. So anybody's welcome to come hang out with me. I know you're probably at work, sneaking in or whatever. I appreciate it. If not, you can watch a replay or whatever you want to do. But if I can't stream it in the daytime, or tomorrow I'll be streaming in the daytime while it's live in court. But other days I'll be, doing the coverage of it at night, the replay, play the clips or whatever happened in the court. All right, so we're going to get into this. Anybody want to know more about it? Read the description. And make sure you hit the like button, share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Tell me, did you hear about this story? What do you think? And also people's watching the replay and that's here. I personally feel that this woman I think she's crazy. I really do. I think she's full-blown crazy. But some people might feel that she's acting and she's not all that crazy. She knew exactly what she was doing. Now, I could be saying this now, and after watching the trial, I'll turn around and say, honey, no, she's faking it. But so far, I don't think so. And I don't think so. And this is another situation, like I said before, child abuse. And your child grows up to be something like this. Well, not in all cases, but in some cases. All right, so share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. And we're going to have it on speed. Well, I'm going to start off the speed on 1.75 because they're coming into the court. Yeah, coming into the court, so it didn't quite start yet. And then I'm going to put on speed 1.25. All right, so 1.75, whatever it is. It's on fast for now until they start talking. And then we go from there. But make sure you hit the like, share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to go in the description and find my email and go from there. Now, if everybody remember, I believe it was on Valentine's Day of this year, how she attacked her last lawyer. Whoa, that was insane. Who wants to attack their lawyer? That's all you have is butcher lawyer. Oh well, because she's insane.
All rise. Circuit Court is now in session. Hannibal Thomas J. Walsh presiding. Silence is requested.
Be seated. Okay, I'll call 22 CF 36.
Okay, now the speed is on 1.25. If it's too fast for anybody, feel free to slow it down on your end. Hit the setting. You can slow it down. That's also to the replay watchers. But we're going to do 1.25 here. And I think I just see who just creeped through the back door. Strong. Hugs and kisses to you. Good to see ya. All right, let's get into it. Mods on deck. I see you too, Jack. Let's get it.
6-3, State of Wisconsin versus Taylor Schabusiness. State appears by Deputy District Attorney Saunders and District Attorney Lezay. The defendant is here in person and with Attorney Freilich. We're on this morning for what I'm anticipating is the first half of a competency hearing. This is for the defense to provide the testimony of Dr. Lytton. So let me ask Mr. Freilich, are you prepared to proceed today?
Yes, I am, Your Honor.
Okay. And Mr. Saunders, are you going to be doing the questioning? Are you prepared to proceed?
Yes.
Just a bit of housekeeping on this topic. I know that we have another hearing scheduled for next week, Friday morning, for potentially an expert ordered by the court to testify. And I offered Mr. Freilich for your expert to be available to listen to that, and potentially, if you chose to have her provide rebuttal testimony. Is all that set, Mr. Freilich?
Yes, I believe so, Your Honor.
Okay. Dr. Lytton, are you available next week, Friday morning?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Well, then I think I will turn the case over to you, Mr. Freilich, if you'd like to call your witness.
Okay, Your Honor. Just as the court knows, the defense filed a motion for requesting a new competency evaluation to have the issue of competency of Taylor Schabusiness addressed by the court. We filed that on July 3rd of 2023. So at this time, I call Dr. Diane Lytton, PhD, to testify.
Okay. And I'll just note, you're correct. You filed that motion. I granted that motion so that the posture of this case is there is another evaluation that's being conducted. And this hearing is a piece of a contested competency hearing. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows what the doctor appointed by the court is going to opine. That may change the status of the case, but that's what we're here for. So, doctor, if you could raise your right hand, I'm going to place you under oath. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Very good. Then the witness is yours, Mr. Freilich.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please state your name for the record?
Diane Lytton, Lytton.
What is your occupation?
I'm an independent forensic psychologist.
Are you licensed in the state of Wisconsin?
Yes.
Are you licensed anywhere else?
No.
Can you briefly provide your educational background?
Yes. I have a doctoral degree in psychology, and I was initially a research scientist at UW-Madison, and then later completed 3,000 hours of postdoctoral training at Mendota Mental Health Institute, and then became a clinical psychologist in the state.
Can you
Since 1997, I was hired at Mendota Mental Health Institute, and left there in 1997 and became an independent forensic psychologist.
Where did you go to college?
UW-Madison. Well, my PhD is from UW-Madison, and I have a master's degree in psychology from the University of Georgia, and my bachelor's degree in psychology was at a small college in southern Georgia, and also in psychology.
Was that at Albany State College in Georgia?
Yes, it's a historic HBCU college.
Could you briefly provide the court with any memberships that you're involved in or associations?
Yes, I'm currently a member of the Wisconsin Psychological Association, former board member, and I'm also a member of an international science organization, ISBA, International Society for Bayesian Analysis, and members of 2 subgroups of that organization.
Are you also a member of the American Psychological Association?
Not right currently. I'm sorry I didn't take that off my resume, but not currently.
You were in the past?
Yeah, I was.
Melvia, I agree with you. He should. The way she attacked that other lawyer. But don't you remember when she attacked that lawyer, how she spazzed out and she didn't know what happened? What happened? I don't know, but this is going to be a real interesting trial. I want to see exactly what is in this woman's head. Okay. All right, let's get back to it.
In the past.
Okay. Now, moving on, could you briefly describe your professional experience?
Yes, beginning at when I was doing my 3,000 hours postdoctoral training at Mendota Mental Health, I worked a year on the adolescent male forensic unit, then worked for several years and was hired as a psychologist on the former civil unit at Mendota. And due to budget cuts, I became a forensic psychologist on the forensic units at Mendota, and was spent 2.5 years on the what's called now the management treatment unit at Mendota, Goodland Hall, where we received overflow competency evaluations needed when the admission unit at Mendota was too full. And also on my unit, we housed the 14 most aggressive male forensic patients in the state. And some were there, again, a subset were there for competency evaluations. I completed 42 competency evaluations, but the majority of the patients on my unit were NGI, committed, legal insanity.
Have you done any teaching or acted as an instructor in the field of psychology?
Yes, I worked a couple years as an adjunct faculty at the Madison Area Technical College and taught psychology courses, and then a couple more years at Edgewood College in Madison. Also taught Introduction to Psychology. And I forgot to mention that since being a forensic psychologist independent, since 1997, I've conducted many hundreds of evaluations of persons for competency, NGI, sentencing dispositions. I do guardianships for Outagamie County, many hundreds.
Have you been involved also as a research scientist?
Yes, I continue to do research. I call it my fun hobby on the side. I don't get paid for now 19 years concerning controversies in the legal system. The overall goal is to advance science in the legal and mental health fields, as you'll see on my CV, regarding kind of boiling it down, how to make decision-making, evidence-based decisions in the legal and mental health fields. The science has not progressed in those fields nearly as much as in what's called the natural sciences, physics, whatnot. I do interdisciplinary research, combining historical history and different fields to help resolve controversies in my field.
Have you written any publications or been involved in any presentations that you have been involved in?
Yes, I think about 11, and I have other publications earlier in my career, a variety of them, but I believe that I have about 11 publications or presentations in this field, and excuse me, have long worked with another forensic psychologist who's now retired, but we've been working on the same issues for, I think, 19 years now.
What kind of publications have you written?
Prior to this 19 years in this, working on this controversies to advance science and legal mental health, I did a variety of different, earlier, during my PhD, I have a number of publications in the psychology, basic psychology field, cognitive psychology field, memory, learning, how people develop. And then as a more of an interdisciplinary scientist at UW-Madison in the medical school, I conducted different interdisciplinary projects on different, you can see on my CV, different fields within the family medicine, published some and presented.
Dr. Lytton, have you prepared a curriculum vitae or a resume?
Yeah, I wrote a brief one.
Okay.
More thing?
Well, let me just ask another question. Your curriculum vitae has a sticker on it, an exhibit sticker, number 1. Your curriculum vitae is several pages, correct?
Yes.
If I indicated to you that it's 5 pages, would that be accurate?
That's about right.
And your curriculum vitae contains all of the information that you just testified to, correct?
Yes.
Even your address, your educational background, memberships, professional experience, and publications. Is that fair?
Yes.
I would offer exhibit 1.
Any objection?
No.
1 is received.
We're going to say something additional.
Well, when you asked me about teaching, I kind of forgot. One aspect of my last 19 years of doing my current research and numerous presentations, some of those presentations were done to groups of attorneys to teach them how to make evidence-informed decisions in the field, in the legal field.
Oh my gosh, Melanie, you had your motherboard? Jeez. Yeah, basically when that happens, you have to get a whole new one. Well, I'm glad that you got a new laptop. You back on point. But gosh, I really hope you didn't lose everything that you might have had saved. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm bad at it too. We got to back stuff up because when something happens. Whew. Okay, I'm glad that you're back on board. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's resume.
So I've done a number of those types of presentations to both defense attorneys and others.
Okay, thank you. With regards to this case, did you have the occasion to meet with Taylor Denise Schabusiness?
Yes.
How did that come about?
I originally was asked to be involved in the case by her former attorney, Quinn Jolly, to examine her, evaluate her for both competency and NGI, not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. And then when he left the case and you assumed the case, then I agreed to continue on the case for you.
Did you initially have contact with Taylor Denise Schabusiness in February of 2023?
Yes.
Could you describe the contact that you had with her at that time? Do you know the specific date?
I have to look on my report if that's okay.
Sure. Refresh your memory.
Sure. I met with her for 3 attempted interviews. The first 2 were in February 7, 2023, and then another attempted interview February 13, 2023. And she refused to talk with me on all 3 occasions. Despite, after the first 2 attempted interviews, her attorney, Mr. Jolly, met with her. She had thrown a chair at me during the first attempted interview.
Was that on February 7th of 2023?
Yes.
Okay, what happened there?
This was done in a private conference room at the jail. And she was nonverbal. She was nonverbal during all 3 of these attempted interviews back in February 2023. But the first time she entered the room, didn't greet me, she acknowledged I was there, and sat down. We both sat down. And I went through, even though she was nonverbal, wasn't talking to me, she would nod her head. So I went through my consent form with her, explaining the reason for my evaluation, her rights to confidentiality, and so on. And she again nodded that she understood. Then when I started the interview, by my usual asking her date of birth, her race, she then suddenly got up from her chair and yelled and went to the corner of the room, picked up fortunately it was a plastic chair, and then she threw it at me across the room. It did not hit me. She then calmly sat back down, and I rang for the guards, and it took them a couple minutes to get there. Meanwhile,
She threw a chair at her. This is going to be one interesting trial. All right, resume. And thank you, Melvia.
I sat back down too, and then asked her about why she had done that. I did notice her physiological response was bizarre, which she didn't have any after just doing that, being extremely angry, throwing a chair at her evaluator, her defense routine evaluator. She sat there very, no response, just blank face, no physiological response of a person who had just done such a thing. The guards then came in and they agreed that I should terminate the interview. But then as we spoke more with the guards, they suggested, well, I could meet with her in the secure attorney's booth, we call it. So I asked her if she would be willing to talk to me if we moved to the secure booth. And I had to ask her a couple times, but then she agreed, again, nodding. So then I moved to the secure booth. And when she came in, she again remained nonverbal despite 10 minutes before saying she would talk to me. I did some goofy Dr. Lytton stuff with her to try to disarm her, to engage her. And she just remained nonverbal, and we finally terminated the interview. Then Mr. Jolly met with her twice to ask why did she throw a chair at me. She couldn't really say, but then he met with her twice over 2 days to verify she'd be willing to talk with me. So I returned on February 13, 2023, and at that time, the guard asked my name, the guard went back to her, Miss Schabusiness's cell, and she refused to talk to me again.
You said there were 3 times that you had contact with her, February 7th, February 13th. What was the other date?
The other one was when you had taken over the case, and then she again agreed to talk with me, and that was, I interviewed her then for several hours with you in the room, I think it was June 19, 2023.
And tell me about that interview on June 19th of 2023.
I had asked that you be present to encourage her. She had, at that point, she had a good relationship with you. Similarly, she had earlier had a good relationship with Mr. Jolly, who she knew from a prior family connection, which of course changed when several days after my attempted interviews with her in February 2023, that's when she attacked Mr. Jolly in the courtroom, and he left the case. So when I interviewed her with you present, my conclusion from observing her reactions to my questions, what she offered during the interview, led me to conclude that, yes, she met the criteria for consideration of the special plea, not guilty, NGI, I call it. But then I also concluded at that time she was not competent to proceed to trial.
Can you tell me what was the foundation for that conclusion or opinion that you had?
The foundation included her looking in detail at her extensive records going back to childhood, looking at the pattern of her behaviors that began in middle school and escalated in high school, review of her Nicolay inpatient records, psychiatric records, that I think were from 2021, and looking at those records, her jail records, and then just the manner in which she has presented to other evaluators in this case and a previous evaluation she had for custody of her son. And then the observations that I made during the interview with her when you were present showed signs of an active psychotic disorder. They included some most predominant things were that other evaluators in this case had also observed too. Her, what we call tangential thought disorder, where she would derail and bring up totally unrelated subjects and really bizarre statements. She had difficulty paying attention and concentrating during that 2-hour interview. When I looked at my notes from that interview, and I compared them to Dr. Tracy Lucetta's earlier 2022 competency evaluation, Ms. Schabusiness, in my interview with her, very similar type of responses that she gave both to me and previously during Dr. Lucetta's evaluation for competency, but also other competency and NGI evaluators in this case. What we call thought disorganization. Her very striking in this case. This is a very unusual case. Her manner in which she presents herself, and that includes not only what she says to people, including jail staff, their mental health people, back when she was at inpatient for 21 days at Nicolay for psychiatric treatment. And then with the evaluators in this case, she has a very unusual, psychologists call it affect, the emotional expressions that are on her face don't match what she's talking about. Again, other evaluators have noticed her tendencies to go off track and not always coherent. We call it thought disorganization, and I noticed that quite prominently during the 2 hours I spent with her. I also interviewed Mr. Jolly over his time on the case. He had met with her weekly meetings with her during his months on the case, other than for a couple months when he was unable to meet with her because she was in seclusion at the jail. And then I also interviewed you. With Mr. Jolly, as the time continued with him on her case, sometimes she seemed coherent and lucid during their conversation, seemed to know what was going on. But then she also would suddenly, and he only interviewed her in the attorney's booth, but sometimes he said that sometimes she would just suddenly stand up and scream. Another time, she suddenly hit her head on the what you call that little thing in there, hit her head. And I asked him, Mr. Jolly, what had they been talking about when she suddenly then got up and screamed or banged her head? And the context of what they've been talking about was not about, like, say, the details of her case events. It was nothing that would have elicited somebody to suddenly get up and scream. He also really, both of you, Mr. Jolly and now you, Mr. Freilich, both of you reported difficulties with her ability to pay attention and concentrate. The major problem, and this is why I raised competency again, is that although she seems to know and remember some basic courtroom, like the people, the judge's role, although that one had a paranoid flavor to it, the judge's role. But she seems to know basics about courtroom procedure, well, not courtroom procedures, but legal stuff, like what's not guilty mean. She has a rudimentary understanding of an NGI plea, although I had to explain it again. I had to explain that in the 2-hour interview. I often had to explain these terms again, but she seems, based on my 2 hours interview with her, your impressions of her, Mr. Jolly's impressions, the other evaluators, she seems to have some understanding, very rudimentary, about different plea options, about roles of different people in the courtroom. However, my opinion about competency rests on that I don't think she lacks insight and judgment and the mental capacity to understand the legal proceedings. That's where my opinion, strong opinion, is that despite her knowing the basics.
I can't with Melvia. What did Melvia say? Well, I would award her a special jacket and a rubber room for her good acting. I can't. Ladies and gentlemen, I know y'all thinking she's acting. I might change my mind after the trial, because you find out things in trial, like, wait a minute, this is a bunch of BS. But after listening to this and the way she killed him, I don't know. And then her childhood, not giving excuses. So people who's here watching replay, don't come gunning for me. I'm not giving excuses. We just go deeper. I go deeper into what could cause a person to be like this. I think she really is crazy. I think so. But we will find out. I stand to be corrected. Resume.
About competency, what a judge does, what a guilty plea is, she still exhibits this fundamental lack of insight and judgment about her cases, about how to act in court, about how to help her defense attorney to understand the proceedings.
Dr. Lytton, were you aware that
Maybe Jack misunderstood, whatever, but she only killed one person. That was her boyfriend. And the person that she killed, that was this one here. This is her boyfriend. They was having, very kinky, kind of sex kind of thing. And it got a little crazy, whatever. You're going to find out in the trial. And I think she was strangling him or something like that. Whatever, she was strangling him, and she just couldn't stop. She was just getting so aroused off, and then she ended up killing him, and she cut his head off, put in a bucket. His mother found the head in the bucket, unfortunately, and a couple of his body parts, even his woodpecker, too. Yep. All right, let's get back to it. I've been wanting to cover this trial, for a minute. Let's get back to it.
Ms. Schabusiness was the subject of a civil commitment order in 2021,
Yes,
and she was, by order of the court, required to be in a psychiatric facility or hospital for a period of time.
yes, and it also came with an order to treat.
A medication order, is that correct?
That's correct, and that's that's not done every day. Both the Chapter 51 commitment, which I was involved in many of those when I worked at Mendota Mental Health and subsequently, and then to go, so that's a mental health commitment, but then to go a step further and for psychiatrists to get an order to treat, that's another step, and it's not done very often. So that was very telling, or a good piece of evidence that in 2021, she had a mental health commitment with an order to treat. The psychiatrist at that time, this was at Nicolay, the inpatient, the psychiatrist had considered discharging her to Bayhaven, I believe, for drug abuse treatment, but they didn't do it. They decided not to do that. So, and then she went off, apparently she went off medications when she was released from Nicolay.
Do you know what kind of medications she was on when she was at the Nicolay Psychiatric Center?
I have to refer to my report, but the medication they used included an antipsychotic medication. She's been on Seroquel. At one point she was prescribed Abilify. These are, and in jail now, she told us that she was also recently prescribed an antipsychotic medication, but she has a history of not complying with taking that medication.
Was that other medication, do you know if it was olanzapine?
It could have been. I said she's been prescribed olanzapine, Seroquel, Abilify, and Risperdal during her past, apparently going all the way back to when she may have been a teenager, and we're still trying to get those records from Bellin, inpatient, child, adolescent.
I hope they can get those records, because I'm so fascinated to find out about her teens. When you listen to this, you'll see what I'm talking about, but hopefully they'll get the records so we can learn a lot about this behavior. Yeah, this is going to be a real a learning, teaching, educational trial to find out more about this personality, and how could you do that to someone, and the way she did it. Dad, that's insane. And oh my gosh, prayers to the mother to find her son like that. She's never gonna be right. And how do you bury the body after she dismembered the whole body? Oh, let's not get into that. All right, back to it. What else? Strong said, if she was on all that medicine, she may not be acting. That's what I'm saying, Strong. I mean, look, I stand to be corrected. But as y'all watching this, and I was doing a little bit of reading before this, I was like, wait a minute, her childhood, she's been on a lot of meds. She's been crazy basically since elementary school. I don't think she's acting. I think this was the time that she just totally snapped. Either it was her stepfather or her biological father that was, doing stuff to her, if you know what I mean, for years. Well, no, I'm not giving nobody no sympathy card over here. So don't be getting that. We just, my channel's a teaching channel, learning channel, so we get into the mind and the relationship. I like to know how they met, how long were they together, but all that's going to come up in the trial. And if I'm correct, he was doing drugs too. So this is one of these, if I'm correct, like a meth-fueled relationship. All right, resume.
Unit where she was admitted in 11th grade after she obviously exhibited some psychiatric symptoms. And then even earlier than that, she has an admission apparently when she was in 7th grade, but we don't have those records yet.
Dr. Lytton, when you met with her, including on June 19th of 2023, did you have any concerns about her affect, her overall affect?
Yes, and that's a term that psychologists, psychiatrists use. It means the facial expressions and maybe even, motor things. And yes, it was striking. And both going back to my 3 attempted interviews with her in February, and I looked at videos, online videos of her appearances when she comes into court, after she attacked Mr. Jolly in court. I looked at those too, and there's a strikingly odd, and it has been noted by other evaluators in the case, this really strikingly odd facial expression. She sometimes is smiling, and the smiling does not fit whatever they're talking about. Jail staff have noticed that. It can be quite rapid in just a day or two, rapid change. But in our interview with her, the 2 hours, I noticed the same thing, that her facial expressions were not consistent with what we were talking about. Just the content of what she was talking about was quite often was quite bizarre. She would sometimes kind of smile. I also noticed in the word smirky, a smirky appearance on her face. Other evaluators have noticed that, and they called it smirky. I've noticed that too. I didn't notice that a lot in the interview, the 2-hour interview, but it was there. So there's to me, very striking difference in how she appears to people versus her actions.
I'm sorry.
Well, and what's being talked about at the time.
Did Ms. Schabusiness say anything about her mental health, what she thought she suffered from or not suffered from? Did she say anything about any kind of prior discussions that she had with mental health professionals?
She's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the past. And sometimes she has announced, I think in the interview with her, the 2-hour interview, I think she said bipolar. But sometimes she seems to agree with that diagnosis. Other times, and she's also said schizophrenia. But then other times in the past, she has then said, I don't think I am.
Yeah. You looked at the records from the Nicolay Psychiatric Clinic, correct?
Yes.
When she was on a civil commitment, was she getting a shot for medication purposes?
Yeah, she has a long pattern of not being compliant consistently with prescribed medications. So they offered her an injected, longer lasting medicine. And in the interview, the 2-hour interview I was able to do with her, she shared that she had just been put on olanzapine, which is another antipsychotic, 3 days before that interview on June 2023. She agreed to take an antipsychotic medication again. I have asked you to get the more recent jail records, which we don't have yet. But so the psychiatrist at the jail thought it could be useful for her. I do not know if she is still on the medications at this time. I don't know.
Did you assess Ms. Schabusiness's memory? And if you did, what comments do you have about that?
Yeah, I did that informally. I didn't administer any tests, but her memory for both remote events in her life, her memory for more recent events, did indicate some gaps in her memory and problems with her memory. Sometimes, and this is a little known fact about a person who may be psychotic, well, I evaluated many people who were psychotic. Sometimes when they're in a psychotic episode, they do have memory gaps. So that could explain some of her memory issues. She's had very startling problems with her memory, her recall of events. Other evaluators have said it could be just all faked. But my observations of her and reading all her records is that she seems to have some genuine memory impairments.
How about any assessments with regards to her speech when you would talk with her?
Yeah, the speech was very strikingly odd again. The content of the speech during the 2-hour interview with her, she would what we call derailed frequently. She'd all of a sudden blurt out something that was totally unrelated to what we were talking about. She thought that she was hearing she seemed, from my judgment, she seemed to be paying attention, attending to both auditory and visual hallucinations. They were, somewhat strange hallucinations, but she has reported that in the past at the jail, Nicolay. So the speech, when you talk with her, it's not to the point of what we call word salad, which is an unusual aspect of some people with a psychotic disorder where you can't understand them at all. It wasn't to that extreme. I don't think it ever has been looking at her records. So it's not word salad. So it's coherent to the listener's point of view, but the content of it was bizarre. She also showed an elevation in the volume of her voice when she spoke about the apparent auditory and visual hallucinations. Over the 2 hours, she got more and more scared, upset. She had a much more difficult time apparently controlling the voices and the visual hallucinations she was experiencing. That I could see on her face that she seemed genuinely upset, scared, just very distracted by what she was seeing and hearing.
I chose Wix for my business because of its massive scope.
Interview that you had with her on June 19th. Can you give me any specific information as to what she said that may have been odd or to...
See, that's what we're talking about. I noticed that she does that a lot. That's talking about the eye movement. It's like it just shifts around, like she's trying to understand stuff. She's trying to formulate stuff in her mind. It's really weird. Her eyes, how she looks. But this lawyer, he need to be careful. She need to be chained to that table, her hands, because you just don't know if she's going to flip out. She's crazy. Let's look at her eyes. All right, resume.
kind of back up these hallucinations that you're testifying about?
When I asked her about auditory visual hallucinations, she began to describe different, hearing a train whistle that got progressively louder during the interview. And it sounded like, it seemed from her point of view, that she was actually seeing a train. At one point, towards the end of the 2 hours, that became so prominent that she, was very, very distracted about it. She does have some coping strategies for how to deal with that, like when she's in the courtroom and other times. So she described that. Yeah, sometimes I can repress that and control it. She reported what we call command hallucinations that tell her to do things for herself, attack people, and she said most of the time she can control that. She said at one point that regarding the train, she just, again, a real tangent, she said that Johnny Cash died on the train. I think the most, well, I do not, I know, the most weirdest thing she said at the point where I was assessing her knowledge about how to act in court, since there's obviously been some problems, this became really bizarre because she talked about the incident of exposing herself in court, and she indicated that she did it to get the judge to like her. And then at that point, I asked you for a...
Ladies and gentlemen, you hear this? She wants to show herself in the court to get the judge to like her. What is this? Wow. See, that's something she learned from when she was a child. Something she learned from a child, that behavior. All right, let's get back to it.
Attorney to describe courtroom behaviors. And she said, again, I have those statements in my report. I don't know if you want me to look here just a minute here, give me that here. This was one of the more, and this is where I concluded that she lacks the insight and judgment and the mental capacity to understand the proceedings. I asked her about, I was going through the plea options with her, and by the way, even though I was doing an NGI evaluation. I assessed competency to proceed to trial in all of my forensic evaluations. If they're just for NGI, I still evaluate the person for competency, doesn't matter. So I was asking her about the plea options. Again, you know, she gave some on-track answers. But when I asked her about what the NGI plea means, she said titties. And I asked her some follow-up questions about what's appropriate courtroom behaviors. She said, show titties in court to judge. And I'm citing, reading from my page 6 here of my evaluation. She recalled doing that in the courtroom, and she hoped it would help the judge's opinions now. That was one of the most unusual things. I asked her about when she told me about that she had been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, age 11 or 12, treated with Adderall. She thought that if she's angry in court, so this is where I was trying to assess her ability to work with you, Mr. Freilich. She thought if she was angry in future court appearances and she cannot understand what is going on, she can ask Mr. Freilich, who will, quote, tap his toes. I asked her about the attack on Mr. Jolly in the courtroom and what her thoughts were at the time. She said, and there's numerous other references. The weird thing that when I briefly discussed the current legal charges with her, she said that she had a thing with Jeffrey Dahmer about a year ago, and just on and on. There were just numerous of these strange comments about Johnny Cash being on the train. She went further into her tangential thoughts about the train, how loud his whistle was, and how Johnny Cash overdosed, apparently, on a train. So there were numerous examples of that. Those are some of the most prominent ones.
Were you, as part of your evaluation, did you talk to her about alcohol or drug use? Or
She's saying she wants to show her breasts in the courtroom. She wants to show them to everybody so they can like her. This is sick. I don't think she's acting. I really don't. I don't think so. Yep, Melvia, show her breasts. That's what she said. She wants to get the judge to like her. Her lawyer, too. She feels that doing stuff like this, you know, they'll like her. Something she learned from her childhood. Drugged up. This is gonna be something else, boy. Alrighty, what BG says. What does it take to get the death penalty nowadays? I can't. Oh, you talking about the low life didn't. Sierra Day didn't. Oh, yeah. That Sierra Day didn't. And she woke either. And she won't eat. She won't either. I'm sorry. Alright, let's get back to it.
or abuse?
Yes.
And can you tell me a little bit about your discussions with her on those topics, and then any opinions that you had about that?
Yeah, let me just find it here. She, you know, in my evaluation, and then regarding previous evaluators, she is fairly consistent about it. And I don't have the exact years written down, but she began to use some drugs after her mother's death when this Schabusiness was in 5th grade. I think THC. She has said she's never been a big drinker of alcohol, but then started to use, she used LSD a couple times, I think in high school or shortly thereafter, but then began to use meth or cocaine, powder cocaine, sometime, and again, I have to look through, find the dates or how old she was, because she started using powder cocaine sometime, I think, after high school, and then methamphetamine, and along with THC and other drugs, maybe in her early 20s.
Did she indicate to you that she used lots of methamphetamine?
Yes. And sometimes she has said that she, could use it 8, 9 times in a day sometimes. And then I think, actually, I think it was more around 2020 because her husband, she told me that her husband was a meth dealer currently in prison and that she started to use methamphetamine a lot around in 2020. And she's had some drug treatment, but then left. She didn't finish drug treatment.
Did she describe how the methamphetamine would make her feel?
Yes, and this is unusual, a little counterintuitive, but she said it made her, that methamphetamine was the only thing that helped her thinking and brought her down enough to be able to think clearly. And interestingly, sometimes in a person with a psychotic mental disorder, sometimes the illegal substance has a paradoxical effect. I've encountered this in a couple other evaluations. I kind of give an example of a person with attention deficit disorder with Adderall, which is the stimulant prescribed to treat ADHD, which she does have and has been prescribed Adderall in the past. And Adderall is a stimulant, and so you wonder, why would you want somebody who has attention deficit hyperactivity to be more stimulated? It has a paradoxical effect with people who have ADHD, and it actually helps them to be less agitated, less up. Well, similarly, with people with a psychotic mental disorder, sometimes a stimulant drug like methamphetamine or LSD. I've encountered this in a handful of other cases where the person with a psychotic mental disorder, this is very similar to what Ms. Schabusiness has reported. Sometimes the drug, methamphetamine, can actually help them with their problems with thinking, feeling real hyper, not being able to get things together. Sometimes can help them, and sometimes they use vast quantities of it to help with that. Again, it's a form of self-medication, but it can have a paradoxical effect, and that's what she has described to other treaters. And the use of methamphetamine, she didn't want to take antipsychotic prescribed medications, but she has stated that she took a methamphetamine to help with her thinking, and it was the only thing that helped, she said.
Did she tell you that when she took methamphetamine, it made her feel like she was floating in air?
Yes, and she told me that, but then she has told other evaluators that too.
Did you inquire as to whether she was ever diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, and she has been so diagnosed. There again, very confusing, her reports about.
Look at her eyes right now. How she constantly keeps blinking. She got a little smirk to it. Look, just look at her eyes. Just look at her.
That. At times she has said that she was unfortunately raised by a pedophile, that she experienced rape by a parent, and then very oddly she has negated saying that. I found that in an evaluation done for the Child Protective Services in Texas that was requested when she wanted to keep custody of her baby. Yes, so what was the question again? Ask me again.
Did you find that she did suffer from PTSD?
Yes, and that's been fairly consistent in her inpatient records. Some other evaluators have noticed that or noted it. I asked her point blank about the effect her mother's death had on her, and she reported, a tremendous impact and PTSD. But then also I asked her about just a routine question we ask is about head injuries, physical and sexual abuse, and she reported that her spouse hit her on the head several times at least. She never pursued legal charges. So definitely I would say she has PTSD and still does have PTSD, and it's caused her a lot of problems and consternation and fear.
You had a chance to review some of her school records, correct?
I did.
What can you tell me about your review of those records?
They were strikingly odd, okay? The more I looked at it, the odder the feeling got. It's unusual that we get real detailed school records, but Mr. Jolly had requested those, so I have those records earlier. What I noticed was that from kindergarten through 4th grade, part of 5th grade, she was a very good student. She got good grades. She socialized appropriately with other peers and with teachers. She was well liked and no problems. And then starting in 5th grade, which was the year her mother died, her behaviors became increasingly, oppositional, to me, bizarre. They increased, as I mentioned in my report, these behaviors increased through middle school into high school, and they were strikingly just aberrant, with saying very nasty things to other classmates in the classes, to very distracting to other kids, and she distracted other kids, which could be ADHD, that's a common symptom, very distractible. But then she said some really nasty, cruel things to other kids, and then also to teachers, as she, from 6th grade through 11th grade, when she was expelled, she would say some really nasty things to teachers, and then also her class had a speaker come in from the community. I don't remember the police officer who it was, and she later said that everything he said was terrible, and basically trashed him. She would leave classes, just walk out of the classroom, fall asleep in class, very distracting. She got numerous problems noted. And then finally in 11th grade, she came into a classroom, just all of a sudden, and she struck another kid several times. Then she was expelled from the class.
Ladies and gentlemen, you hear this? 11th grade just walked into class and just struck a student. That student is still, feeling it. She's insane. And this is a history, all this stuff. And see, if this is a history of all her behavior, and there was nobody really properly helping her. If they did, the man would probably be alive right now. I'm just saying. Well, I can't wait for this trial. Let's get back to it.
From the school, I think in Green Bay. And then she apparently completed high school. But this whole change in her behaviors in 5th grade through 11th grade were very strikingly different, odd. They went, as I say in my report, her behaviors went well beyond just your regular, typical bully. It really struck me. And I began to, when I saw her adult inpatient records, her behaviors at the Brown County Jail, the other evaluations in this case, or earlier cases involving battery and stuff like that, she kind of putting it together, I began to wonder, well, what do we got going here? Did she have some other issues that started, the mental illness that she has now, did that start in 5th, 6th, 7th grade and get progressively worse? I have also, frankly, considered the possibility of some neurodevelopmental issues. I don't know how much she has been evaluated for that possibility, but I certainly now recommending both, as I did before, and as Dr. Lucetta did, I'm certainly recommending further inpatient assessment and neuropsychological testing, and then referral to a neurologist and possible further evaluation to rule out that there's something else going on here, neural development, some kind of organic problems, because things the whole picture of her doesn't quite add up.
Were you concerned about whether or not she's got an organic brain injury?
Yes.
Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. It's like we talk about MDs, medical doctors talk about when a person presents, and they're taught this like first week in medical school. When a patient comes to a physician, you look for horses first, In other words, the most common explanation for the patient's symptoms versus zebras, really much less common explanations of a person's behavior. So in Miss Schabusiness's situation, there are some obvious things that would be considered the horses. First, bipolar disorder, which she has been diagnosed with. Dr. Lucetta considered the obvious methamphetamine-induced psychotic disorder, which seems much less likely now that she's been off methamphetamine for over a year. So we look at, okay.
Great question, Strong. I hear what the woman is saying, but what do the prosecutors have to say? Now, if I'm correct, I just seen this one, but there was another one. There was a day 2 of the pretrial hearing. I hope I have it correct, right? But basically, they told her that she was competent to stand trial. So basically, I guess the defense lost, if I'm making sense. Hopefully I'm making sense. But I'm just playing this part. I'm not playing the other part. But maybe I'll upload the what the prosecution had to say. Hopefully I got it right. All right, let's get back to it.
Bipolar, she's already been diagnosed with bipolar, so some of her symptoms could be that, and her symptoms do seem to fit that. However, as you hate to look at the zebras over here, the less common things, but when I look at her whole, this very weird, odd presentation that she has exhibited with me, with jail staff, back when she was inpatient, as a child, as an adolescent, it made, you look at the zebra would be some neurological, neurodevelopmental issue. She was diagnosed apparently as a child with ADHD, but is there something else going on with her in her brain that could possibly help to explain her very, very aberrant behaviors? And I've seen by now probably thousands of people with mental illnesses, including the really bad mental illnesses at Mendota. And things just don't totally add up with her. Or just a kind of a coarse diagnoses, the bipolar or some schizophrenia, there seems to be, when you look at her whole history and the way she's presenting now, there seems to be something else there. So I would recommend at this point, I don't know how it can be done unless it's inpatient, a thorough neuropsychological evaluation.
Did you consider recommending an MRI of her brain as well as part of the testing?
Yeah, I'm not a medical doctor, so that has to be done by a psychiatrist or a neurologist, but they are a board-certified psychiatrist who's also a board-certified neurologist simultaneous. So that would have to be recommended by a psychiatrist, usually after neuropsychological evaluation and testing is done. It's usually the order it's done. I did mention to you, Mr. Freilich, that if we're able to get her childhood and adolescent inpatient records, you've asked for the Bellin child adolescent psychiatry inpatient records from when she was in 11th grade, but there's also, she has reported earlier that she was admitted to a psychiatric facility when she was in 7th grade. If we can get those records, which I hope we can soon, then she may have had those screening tests when she was younger. We just don't know. But at this point in time, I would recommend thorough neuropsychological testing as a first step. And then her psychiatrist would have to take it from there, whether or not he would recommend an MRI just to make sure there's not some kind of a developmental disorder, neurodevelopmental disorder that could possibly account for some of her odd presentations. So that's what I would strongly recommend at this point. The other issue, I keep on here a bit, is this is also beyond a very interesting, very, very complex case that I recognize from day one. But the other interesting and real confusing aspect of this case is that now we have this woman who's been evaluated, I don't know, by 4 or 5 other evaluators, and she was evaluated yesterday morning by Dr. Seipel, again, for his second time. There's some very unusual things, well, sort of unusual, about her psychological testing that these other evaluators have done that seem to point to possible feigning or faking, malingering, faking of intentional faking of a mental illness. I don't think so. I don't think that's what we got going on here. Nope. But the fact that they have said that and that they found that, and so two of the evaluators in the past, Dr. Luchetta and one other evaluator, and the judge decided, read from one of their evaluations, two of them have suggested that in case her manners, her emotions, her presentation changes regarding competency, that they both suggested that further testing or further evaluation should be done. Well, definitely, I agree with that. It is definitely. But the fact that she overpresented symptoms of a mental disorder, and I got this interesting quote from Dr. Luchetta's evaluation for competency, where she could not come up with an opinion. Very unusual for Dr. Luchetta, who, like me, worked inpatient. She was the director of psychology at Winnebago Mental Health. So both she and I have seen hundreds of mentally ill people. Her report is April 29th, 2022. She says that, this is interesting, the use of screening measures, and that was psychological tests. This is on page 7. The use of a screening measure is routine, and the possibility that the defendant is feigning is not to be confused with the probability of feigning. Indeed, most defendants classified as possibly faking by the screening instrument used in this examination are, on further examination, classified as non-feigning. So, there you go. That even though on psychological tests, personality tests, that Ms. Schabusiness was given by other evaluators that suggested that she was possibly faking mental health symptoms, as Dr. Luchetta astutely pointed out, more often than not, with further evaluations of the person possibly faking, they're not found to be faking. So I definitely agree with that the psychological testings they're suggestive. But the bottom line is that the fact that she has had numerous evaluators administer psychological testing that indicated she was faking, exaggerating symptoms, that's unusual.
Ms. Schabusiness has been evaluated by multiple doctors, multiple professionals, correct?
Yes, both for the current case and then by many other mental health, both inpatient treaters in the past.
And at least with regards to this case, have you reviewed the other doctors' reports?
Yes.
Did any red flags come out and present themselves to you with regards to your overall review of all these evaluations?
Yeah, there was a lot of red flags, and some of them I've already mentioned. Again, a red flag is when a person is given a psychological testing, and there is some evidence of feigning, exaggerating symptoms. That's a red flag. In other words, it doesn't mean they're wrong.
Is it a red flag that doctors have different opinions?
Yes. And then the striking Dr. Luchetta's evaluation, where she could not form an opinion and recommended inpatient evaluation. It is pretty darn unusual when a psychologist, with her experience, ends up not being able to make an opinion and then recommends inpatient treatment and evaluation. That was a red flag. The very weird manner how Ms. Schabusiness presents herself, and all of these other prior evaluations, well, 5 of them, those were all done before she threw the chair at me and before she attacked her attorney in court. So, that's a bit, I had subsequent to their evaluations, I was able to experience that. First time in 32 years, anybody's thrown a chair at me, okay? And I'm not the government's expert, I'm the defense, never had that happen before. Okay? Never, only, I'm trying to dredge up.
She said in her 32 years of doing this, she never had no one throw a chair at her. Wow. All right, resume.
thousands of interviews I've done, did anybody ever refuse to speak with me? Well, yeah, real recently a guy down in Illinois refused to speak with me as a sexually violent person. But that's very unusual, where, unless, say when I worked at Mendota or had gone back to Mendota or Winnebago, well, I had a guy, guardianship evaluation at Winnebago, who refused just a couple days ago, who refused to talk to me. That's very unusual when a person refuses to talk to, not the guy at Winnebago just the other day, because I'm working for the Allegheny County Court Counsel, but very unusual when a person who's hired for the defense, when they would refuse to speak with me. It was very striking after my 2-hour interview with her, when I compared her answers to my questions about competency, about her mental health background. Very striking when I compared her answers to what she had told Dr. Lucetta. Very similar, this off-track, tangential stuff. Dr. Lucetta noticed her thought, and she believed that she had a thought disorder, which I totally agree with. Dr. Lucetta had noticed that, is going off on tangents, saying really strange things. So that those things were quite red flags. The fact how she presented to other evaluators in this case, and then back to other previous mental health treaters, inpatient, the hypersexuality, which nobody else has noticed or considered. I spoke with that about bipolar symptoms. When I interviewed her, I asked her point blank about, has she ever experienced hypersexuality? When she was in a very elevated mood, she seemed very surprised about that, and then said yes, that has been a problem. Another little tidbit nobody else has noticed was that she continued to be hypersexual. I believe it was when she was admitted to Nicolay. They caught her before she was on antipsychotic medication. She was caught in the bathroom, inpatient. She was caught in a bathroom with 2 different male patients there. So she confirmed hypersexuality behaviors in the past. So that was really striking too.
You talked to her about her drug use, correct?
I believe so. I'd have to look at I believe we covered that. And it's been covered in pretty detail with the other evaluators, and in her past admissions to inpatient treatment. And she's been pretty consistent with and forthright about her drug abuse. Yeah, she admitted to working as a prostitute in 2020 in exchange for methamphetamine. She told me that around that time, she snorted much cocaine and then had impulses that, quote, drive me insane, could not understand, hard to deal with, act out. She described a feeling like floating in the air when she used methamphetamine.
Did you consider whether or not her drug usage may have caused brain damage?
Unfortunately, it is something, and again, that's one of those zebra things, that most people who use illegal drugs don't end up with brain damage. However, one of the first drugs she ever used as a child and early adolescence was marijuana, which we know in a subset of kids who use marijuana as a kid or teenager, it can be associated with triggering a psychotic mental illness like bipolar or schizophrenia. And we don't know why exactly, but that's possible. So that's one thing that possibly happens here. A person who has maybe a genetic predisposition to a psychotic mental illness, who then uses marijuana during the time their brain is developing, it is associated with somewhat more likely to develop a psychotic mental illness. So that's a possibility there. But then just the whole complex of this case, the complexity of this case, just strongly suggests we need an inpatient. This is a person, in my opinion, has fallen through the cracks, which I don't like to see, from a mentally ill person with a documented mental health history of serious psychotic mental illness. It possibly has fallen through the cracks into the legal system, which is not good. Criminal justice, the criminal justice system.
Did you,
And is it methamphetamine? That's another concern, and the other issue, methamphetamine use, heavy use of drugs like methamphetamine, that can cause, and again, zebra and here are very unusual, but that can cause brain damage too. But again, we're now a year with beyond any use of methamphetamine or other drugs, and we still have those symptoms. Poor memory, poor concentration, auditory, visual hallucinations, tangential thinking, a thought disorder. So what is it? Is it just bipolar or some schizophrenia? But it just all doesn't quite add up.
Dr. Lytton, did you prepare a report for this case for Taylor Denise Schabusiness?
Yes.
Was that dated July 3rd of 2023?
Yes.
Was that on your letterhead?
Yes.
And where is your office located?
Oshkosh.
Oshkosh, Wisconsin?
Yes.
Dr. Lytton, is your report nine pages?
Yes.
Did you sign it?
Electronically.
Okay. And it is dated July 3rd of 2023?
Yes.
I put a sticker on it, exhibit number 2. You believe that all of the commentary that you provided today is a part of your report?
Yes.
For exhibit number 2?
Any objection?
No.
Two will be received.
Is your testimony to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty?
Yes.
And do you have an opinion as it relates to the issue of competency for Taylor Denise Schabusiness?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
My opinion in this case is that she's not competent to proceed to trial. Basically, on the basis is that she lacks insight and judgment and the mental capacity to understand the proceedings and to assist in her own defense.
Your Honor, I'd offer exhibit number 2 and number 1.
I already received them both.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further from me.
Cross-examination.
Doctor, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, so you've been retained by the defense in this case, right?
Yeah.
Is it fair to say the majority of your work is done in 980 work?
I've lost almost 100 pounds. I've lost a total of almost 70 pounds using bone broth. That is so exciting. I am down 55 pounds.
First 21 day, I think I had dropped about 18 pounds.
You wake up with a flat stomach, you wake up energetic. It is the bomb.
No.
Okay, so for instance,
There's many guardianships for Allegheny County and a variety of other evaluations. So probably not, maybe half and half, maybe.
okay, so with respect to the publications and presentations you've listed in Exhibit 1 here, it looks like all of them since at least 2010, 2009 are in the area of sexual predators and 980 work. Does that seem accurate?
Well, superficially, because of it's just an example, a very interesting example where, and again, we're talking about sexually violent person predator evaluations. It's just a thing I stumbled into that field back when we got our law in Chapter 980 law in 1994, and I was working at Mendota, and we all had to do those evaluations. Then right away, controversies started up about how do you do those evaluations, and the controversies just continued. So it's only an example. It's a tiny, tiny little field within the legal matters, the SVP, but it's just an example, convenient for a scientist. To use it to further advance science. So it's like an example of a very controversial area where science is totally derailed. So it's just, I used it as an example, and my main colleague, and we have a whole bunch of international allies helping us on the research too. So just use it as an example of the controversies for education to advance science in the legal and mental health field.
So again, the question was, I mean, the publications that are listed in Exhibit 1 here deal with sexual violent predator commitments. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Is there publications recently in the issues of a competency or conducting NGI evaluations?
No.
When you've testified in your capacity in 980 work, have you ever testified for the state as to those findings?
Yes.
And you said hundreds of NGI evaluations, competency evaluations, guardianships, and sentencing-related evaluations. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Of those hundreds, how many of those specifically dealt with competency evaluations?
Every forensic evaluation I do, and that's all I do now, every one, I evaluate the person's competency to proceed to trial. Now, in setting aside the SVP, sexually violent predator or person, and in federal courts, it's the Adam Walsh Act. And I testified in those, and then I'm directly appointed.
Doctor, you just try to focus on the question, okay? Because I understand you have ranges of experience, but we're not in federal court, so we're not dealing with the Adam Walsh Act or anything of that nature. Just try to focus on the question, okay?
So, Doctor, I'll ask it, how many court-ordered competency evaluations have you performed in your career?
I don't know. I had to count them on. I don't know.
Okay.
Many.
Many? Are we talking a dozen?
I did 42 while I was at the Donna Mental Health Institute. I've done hundreds of evaluations for competency since 1997.
Okay. And those are hundreds of court-ordered competency evaluations since 1997?
Some of them were court-ordered NGIs, some were court-ordered, or not court-ordered, but some were for the defense attorneys for sentencing disposition.
Okay. So then I want to ask about your evaluation with Ms. Schabusiness, and that was June 19th of 2023, right?
Yes.
The interview that formed the basis of your current report, I should say. You previously interviewed her in February, right?
Right.
Okay. Sure. So on June 19th, during your interview with Ms. Schabusiness, did you ask her about various roles of the judicial actors during a criminal case?
Yes.
For instance, did you ask her what the judge's role was in the case?
Yes.
And she replied that it's to judge her, to look at her, things to that effect, right?
Right.
And you went through the jury's role with her.
Right.
And you went through the various pleas that were available to her.
Yes.
And did you ever talk about, like, did she have an awareness of what she was charged with?
Yes, and she does, both with me in my interview and then with other evaluators. She does know what she's charged with.
And not only, you know, what she's charged with, but like the substance of the allegations. Did she appear to have an understanding of that too?
You know, you mean the substance, you mean the severity of it, Matt?
Yeah, what the state alleges happened. Is she aware of that?
Yeah, we did not go into big, major detail about the case events, but she seems to be aware of she knows what she's charged with. That's consistent throughout my interview and the prior interview. She knows what she's charged with. She seems to, not in my interview, but other people's interviews, she seems to recognize its seriousness, misdemeanor versus a felony.
And Attorney Freilich was with Ms. Schabusiness during your contact with her on June 19th, right?
Yes.
Did she have an awareness of who that person was?
Yes.
And there were times I think he talked about where they would confer and Attorney Freilich would talk to her about certain things that we were talking about?
Only when I invited him to do that. He remained silent for most of, other than the initial interview to set her at ease. And she seemed responsive to that. But other than that, he didn't interject anything.
Sure.
Other than when I asked him to explain to her appropriate courtroom behaviors.
And I think I may have asked this, you kind of touched on the various plea options, not guilty, NGI pleas with the defendant.
Yeah.
Did you talk through like what those various things mean in terms of what the consequences of various pleas are?
To some extent. Again, she had an increasing problem with being very distracted, inattentive. And I was a little surprised during just the plea options that she still seemed pretty hazy about them, even though she had been explained them before. With say the NGI plea, she didn't seem to understand what happened if you're found NGI. But I explained the bifurcated trial, and she appeared familiar with it.
To
some extent, but again, I had to explain it all to her again, which is unusual because she had had that explained to her by 3 other evaluators.
When you explained those topics and concepts to the defendant, did you then ask, to see if she had the capacity to retain that information?
No.
You didn't ask that?
At that point, during the whole interview, she was distracted. And by that point in the interview, she was very distracted by apparent auditory hallucinations, visual stuff. So I didn't go back in each of those areas to see if she retained.
I'm going to share the secret to starting your business without breaking the bank. Starting a business.
The information.
And again, this interview was June 19th, right?
Right.
So you were aware about 6 days before your interview with Ms. Schabusiness, there was a day-long motion hearing. Were you aware of that?
I'm not sure. There's been numerous motion hearings that I wasn't aware of, so I'm not sure.
Did you ever inquire with the defendant if, hey, did you know what happened last week? Were you aware of that hearing? Did you ever ask any of those questions?
I asked her the questions about the chair throwing, why, with me, which she didn't have any memory for. I asked her about the attack on her, Mr. Jolly in the courtroom.
I think the question, Doctor, was related to the hearing that occurred a few days. I don't think he asked whether you asked her about the chair. So just try to focus on the question, Doctor. Mr. Freilich can certainly ask redirect questions, okay? Why don't you go ahead and ask the question again, Mr. Saunders?
Yeah, so was there any conversation with the defendant about her awareness of what happened on June 13th at that hearing?
I don't believe I asked her about that. I didn't know what it was. You have to remind me what that was.
Okay, so there was no discussion about any prior hearings. Was she aware of what was going on? There were hearings in May, there were hearings in April. Any discussion about those hearings?
Not unless one of them involved a chair, her attacking Mr. Jolly.
Okay. You brought up the topic of prior evaluators talking about the topic of feigning, lingering. Do you remember talking about that earlier in direct examination?
Yeah.
And I think in your report, you actually quote, psychological testing by other evaluators found signs of possible malingering or intentional faking of mental disorder symptoms. Does that seem consistent with what you wrote in your report?
Yeah.
And, somebody with your experience, is that something you're trained to kind of look for in every evaluation you're doing?
Yeah.
Sometimes you use, instruments to kind of gauge that.
Yeah.
And I think you even referenced at the end of your report, quote, testing can reveal attempts to fake a mental disorder, end quote. Is that right?
Yes.
And so what attempts and instruments did you use in this case to determine if the information Ms. Schabusiness was telling you was feigned or false narrative?
I did not do any formal psychological testing with Ms. Schabusiness.
And I think you did mention on direct that sometimes those screening measures can be utilized to help with that, right?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes.
And there's none utilized in this case.
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
On those topics, Mr. Freilich.
Based on your training and experience in meeting with lots of different patients, sometimes you come into a situation where someone that you're assessing or evaluating, they try to fool you into thinking they're normal?
Yes, that's an interesting question. Yes, that happens to kind of reverse. Yeah, right.
Is that where feigning or faking can come in?
Well, yes, but when that's used kind of formally, it means the person's intending to intentionally faking mental health symptoms. I think what you asked was kind of the reverse. Do sometimes people I'm evaluating trying to convince me they don't have a mental illness? Well, that happens a lot. And Ms. Schabusiness has done that with other evaluators or treaters, that she doesn't have a mental illness.
When the prosecutor was asking you questions about whether Ms. Schabusiness talked about motion hearings or other court proceedings, and you started talking about throwing a chair and the attack on Mr. Jolly, what were you referring to?
I don't remember what the hearing was that she threw the chair, or rather when she attacked Mr. Jolly. I think that was for a competency motion, but I guess there's been 5 competency hearings so far in this case. And I don't remember which is which and what all motions were done with each of those hearings.
Did she ever give you any reasons why she threw the chair or apparently attacked Mr. Jolly?
No, well, with the chair throwing with me, she didn't recall it. She said she only read it in the jail logbook, but she just, and then when I asked her about why did she attack Mr. Jolly, which was unusual. I mean, not only was that unusual to do that in court, but it was unusual because she had previously expressed that she liked him, so that was unusual. And the only thing she said was about that, you know, I asked her, what were your thoughts at the time she attacked Mr. Jolly in court? And she could only say it was like a carnival in the courtroom. She told Mr. Jolly in the past that she had a very hard time thinking. That was the only reason she gave Mr. Jolly about why she threw the chair at me. I had problems with thinking.
And during your meetings with her, did she exhibit any obsessive compulsive behaviors as well?
I think this is outside the scope. I'd object, Judge.
Yeah, Mr. Freilich, you're covering issues that he didn't cover in his cross. So we're getting back into direct. So I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay, I have nothing further then.
Okay, any on those topics, Mr.
No, thank you.
Saunders?
Sorry.
Okay.
Your Honor, on that topic though, would the court at least consider some of the comments in her report related to obsessive compulsive issues?
The report's been offered into evidence and it's been received, so I consider everything that's in evidence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the matter is concluded for today then, Doctor. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't plan to show it, but I'm just going to show another video. It's like 10 minutes of when she attacked her lawyer. So let's watch that one. It's about like 8 minutes, 9 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes. Let me show that one when she attacked the lawyer. Hopefully I got the right video. I just pulled it up. It both says body cam. Let's see. Listen to the music while I set it up. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this is the full one, but it says body cam. Now this is when she attacked her lawyer on, I believe on Valentine's Day. Oh boy. Alright, let's watch this clip, ladies and gentlemen.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney. You can't do that here. You okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna stay here for a minute, all right?
Okay.
Are you able to sit up, Taylor? She can, Mom. She's gonna stay right where she's at. All right. Just relax. Catch your breath. I don't know why you called me down there. I should have stayed here where I was. Yeah, what the f did you need? I have no idea. Cameras. Oh, sorry. Cameras. Taylor?
Was he okay?
Are you okay?
Okay.
Right.
But he's okay.
I'm gonna have you sit up against the door.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna help you. Okay? So get your feet underneath you. Yep. Turn towards me. Just a little bit.
No, that's okay. I can use it.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now slide back. Yep. All the way to the door. Use your feet and just push back. There you go. There you go. Perfect. One more big one. You're good. All right. Just relax. Are you hurt?
No.
You hurt anywhere? Your wrist?
No.
Because I see you got some bruising.
Oh, no.
Any tingling in your fingers or feet or neck?
No.
Okay.
Why don't we?
Your vision okay?
Yes.
What's that?
Camera, everything.
All right.
Over.
What do you want her to use?
Hold on, second floor, holding? Probably.
Is first covered or do we might as well close it?
Well, we're gonna have prelims.
Prelims coming up here.
Okay, because they're bringing 7 in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just go to second.
Second.
So and we'll stand by there.
Taylor, can you walk?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you get your shoes on?
Okay.
Got my paper.
Got it.
205 monitor. We're moving to a second floor holding.
You doing all right?
Yes. Okay, I'm bringing it up on second floor, this is?
Yeah, second floor.
He was asking. He was asking about the movie.
Morning. Hey. Have a seat. She also, she's the one up on her attorney.
She just hit him or what?
I did not.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
Yeah, you can't do that here.
You okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna stay here for a minute, all right?
Are you able to sit up, Taylor?
She can, Mom. She's gonna stay right where she's
Okay.
at.
All right.
Just relax. Catch your breath.
I don't know why you called me down there. I should have stayed here where I was.
Yeah, what the did he
I had
need?
no idea.
Okay, cameras.
Oh, sorry.
Cameras.
Taylor,
Was he injured?
are you okay?
Okay.
Okay.
But he's okay?
I'm gonna have you sit up against the door. Okay, we're gonna help you. Okay? So get your feet underneath you.
Yep.
Turn towards me. Just a little bit.
No, that's okay. We'll use it.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Now slide back.
Yep. Use
All
your
the way to the
feet.
door.
Use your feet and just push back. There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
One more big one.
You're good. All right. Just relax. Are you hurt?
No.
You hurt anywhere? Your wrist?
No.
Because I see you got some bruising.
No.
Every time I take trips out to the farm,
Any tingling in your fingers or feet or neck?
No.
Okay. Your vision okay?
Yes.
What's that? All right. What do you want her to do?
You want to go to second floor? Holding? Probably.
First covered or I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have prelim.
Prelim's coming up here.
Okay. Because they're bringing 7 in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just go to second floor.
Second
and
floor?
then just go
Okay.
back there.
Taylor, can you walk?
Roger that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you get your shoes on? Get my paper.
Got it.
205 monitor. We're moving to a second floor holding.
You doing all right?
Okay, are you bringing out a bunch of treatment?
Second floor, yeah. He was asking, sorry. He was asking about the juvie. Go ahead, Danny. I'm gonna go through the door here.
Okay. Have a seat. She also, she's one off on her thing.
She just hit him? What?
Just relax, Taylor, okay?
You guys probably didn't get it, but your videos, just make sure they're on now.
Did not.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
Yeah, you can't do that here.
You okay?
Yeah.
Are you able to sit
You're gonna
up?
stay here for a minute, all right?
Are you able to sit up, Taylor?
She can, Mom. She's gonna stay right where she's
Okay.
at.
All right.
Just relax. Catch your breath.
He called me down there. I should have stayed there where I was.
Yeah, what the f did he
I have
need?
no idea.
Okay, cameras,
I'm sorry.
cameras.
Taylor,
Was he
are
injured?
you okay?
Okay, but he's okay.
I'm gonna have you sit up against the door. Okay, we're gonna help you. Okay? So get your feet underneath you. Turn towards me. Just a little bit.
No, that's okay. We'll use it.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Slide back.
Yep.
All the way to the door.
Use your feet and just push back. There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
One more big one.
You're good. All right. Just relax. Are you hurt?
No.
You hurt anywhere? Your wrist?
No.
Because I see you got some bruising.
No.
Any tingling in your fingers or feet or neck?
Why don't we,
Your vision
if we're
okay?
ready to move down, because we have camera and everything, we can move her down into the
What do you want
holding.
to do? You want to go down the second floor? Holding?
Is first covered, or we might as well go right
Oh,
first?
yeah, prelims.
Prelims coming up here.
Okay, because they're bringing 7 in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just go to second floor
Second
now, and then
floor.
we'll stand by there.
Taylor, can you walk?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you get your shoes on?
Okay.
Got it.
205 monitor. We're moving to second floor holding for right now.
You doing all right?
Okay, are they bringing in a bunch of prelims, or are we okay there?
You can go ahead to the second floor there.
Second floor, you say?
Yeah.
He was asking. He was asking about the tree. I'll go stay there. Okay.
Okay, that one was the body cam of, I guess it was showing the different angles, but we didn't get to see the attack. So I'm going to show you another video. We're going to see the attack on here. Hold a second. Listen to the music while you wait. Okay, if I'm correct, this will be the video when you see the attack. And they're going to show a little bit of the body cam. So we're just going to watch like some of this one. It's like about 8 minutes long. Hang in there. Let's get it.
Shocking video shows an accused murderer lash out at her defense attorney as a judge agrees to push back her upcoming trial.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
Yeah, it was certainly an attack, and I've been in so many courtrooms and so many cases, and this is the first time I've really seen a defendant physically go after their own attorney.
Court video shows Taylor Schabusiness lunge at defense attorney Quinn Jolly before she's restrained by a sheriff's deputy. It happened in Green Bay, Wisconsin on February 14th. 25-year-old Schabusiness appeared in Brown County Court for a competency hearing. Schabusiness, who is accused of murdering and dismembering her lover, 24-year-old Shad Thyrion, last year, was set to go to trial next month. But at the competency hearing, her attorney asked Judge Thomas Walsh for 2 more weeks, hoping a defense expert could testify about Schabusiness's mental status. When the judge ruled Schabusiness's trial could be pushed back to May, she physically attacked her attorney.
And the judge was basically looking at a future date. And then all of a sudden, that's when she got up and attacked her attorney.
Video shows Schabusiness sitting with her hands in her lap before abruptly standing up and attacking her attorney. After that, a Brown County Sheriff's deputy breaks up the fight and works to restrain her. He continues to wrestle Schabusiness to the ground before the courtroom is evacuated. About 1 minute into the struggle, another sheriff's deputy rushes into the courtroom to help in the restraining of Schabusiness. A third sheriff's deputy rushes in seconds later as additional backup. Reporter and anchor Brittany Schmidt was inside the courtroom as all the chaos unfolded.
She is wearing a belt and her handcuffs are attached to that belt. So she didn't have a lot of range of motion, but you do see her lead with her elbow and lunge at her defense attorney. And he puts his hands up to defend himself. And the deputy is very close by, within feet of her. He gets her to the ground rather quickly and maintains control of her. He holds her down as they call for backup. She did have her foot like wrapped around some cord on his belt. And that's when they said, okay, we need everybody to clear the room because for safety reasons. So everybody was escorted out of the courtroom at that time.
Schmidt, who works for local Green Bay station WBAY, says she's followed the disturbing case for months, but has never seen the defendant act out.
I've covered Schabusiness in court, man, I would say a half a dozen times now. And every time I see her in court, she's silent, she is motionless, she's straightforward, very little emotion, in and out, no big deal. So this is not something that even I expected to see from her. I know that her defense has brought up questions about her competency and her actions in jail at the time, but it was definitely not something anybody expected, and everybody was really shocked when they heard the commotion, and then you see what was happening, and we kind of just all watched.
In February of last year, then 24-year-old Schabusiness was arrested and charged with Shad Thyrion's murder. This came after Thyrion's mother found his decapitated head at the bottom of her stairway. Investigators say Schabusiness murdered Thyrion after she began choking him during sex. She later told investigators she had been smoking meth and shooting up trazodone. After Thyrion was killed, investigators say Schabusiness dismembered his body and performed sexual acts on it. She allegedly put a leg and foot in her vehicle and left Thyrion's head in a bucket. She later told investigators, quote, "I can't believe I left the head though." She has since pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect to her charges.
I think this case has kind of grabbed national attention just because the nature of the case and the details in the criminal complaint are extremely gruesome and it's extremely violent. And it's one of those things where you never think it happens in your own backyard until it does.
But Schmidt says there were no indications at Tuesday's hearing that Schabusiness would lash out.
You see the moments right before the attack where Schabusiness is just kind of motionless. She doesn't say anything during the attack. Her attorney is just sitting there. He's not talking at all because at this time the judge was talking about a future trial date. So there's really no commotion at all. And then you see the attack and the deputy comes in and grabs her, takes her to the ground. And, you know, she's in handcuffs, which are attached to her belt. So he was able to hold her down rather quickly and keep her that way, even as she's fighting and pushing back and kicking and stuff like that.
Schmidt herself is caught on camera reacting to the fight.
Even I jumped back and kind of moved closer to my photographer because it was just so shocking and we were just kind of stunned at what we were watching and seeing happen.
Video also shows Brown County Sheriff's deputies' quick response to the attack.
So I reached out to the Brown County Sheriff's Office today, and they actually said that their deputies acted as they were supposed to, as they were trained to make sure that everybody was safe in the court. And we saw that when we were in there. The deputy who was with Schabusiness had her down on the ground within moments of the attack. He held her down the whole time.
Following the attack, Schmidt says news cameras caught Schabusiness speaking with sheriff's deputies, asking what happened.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
You can't do that here.
After that, Schmidt says everyone was allowed back inside the courtroom.
And then once we were kind of brought back in, everybody just kind of sat down. The judge came back out. We went back on the record. And the judge did not address it at all. He just moved right into talking about what's next, when can the next date be, and when should we have this competency hearing. So he did not address the attack or say anything. Because of the commotion in the courtroom, I did not watch the judge and see what he did because we were all so shocked.
As the judge discussed a future trial date, Schabusiness's attorney made a shocking announcement.
They kind of tentatively talked about May 15th, but it was never set on record. They just kind of tentatively put it out there because they had to make sure that
Okay, we don't have to watch any more of that one. I just wanted to show you when she attacked her lawyer. That was insane, wasn't it? Totally insane. Alright, so like I said, I'll be covering in the morning. If you could be there, not I understand people be working and stuff, so it might be a little bit difficult, or you can watch the replay if you like. And oh my gosh, hold a second. Alright, but like I said, I will be covering like in the evening, just showing clips and stuff of the trial, because I think this is going to be extremely interesting. We see how it goes, and tomorrow, Monday, will be the opening statements for the prosecution and the defense, so we'll learn a lot. We're going to learn a lot off this trial, but I don't know how long the trial is. I know one content creator said about a week, but I don't know how this is going to be done in a week, but we'll see. Never know. Every state, different rules of how they go. I don't know. Alright, so stay tuned for some more of Donna Just Being Real. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and opinions. We will see. Like I said, right now, I feel that, you know, she's insane. I do. But I might change my thoughts later after watching trial. We'll see what comes up. Time will tell. Alright, like I always say, is date smart, not thirsty, and stay away from drugs. It's just not even worth it. Bye. Adios.